What's good, friends list, episode 30 of the Gamecast coming at you, with new job listings from Bethesda Game Studios suggesting that the newest entry in the legendary Elder Scrolls franchise has finally entered full-on production, along with the potential of a full reveal of the mysterious new IP Starfield right around the corner. It feels as though the once-beloved game developer has arrived at Crossroads. So what will the future of Bethesda look like heading into next gen? Can they knock off the rust and bring back a claim to their name as a great game developer after the disastrous launch of Fallout 76? We tried to see what the future holds for the Rockville, Maryland developer. Plus, it looks as though Xbox may be looking to claim a gaming stake in the land of the rising sun. We'll explain what Phil Spencer is up to in Japan, along with much more, on a new episode of the Game Pass Gamecast.
Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
So, yeah, fucking Pete Weber, man. This fucking jabroni. Like,
he's a hero.
He's a hero, but the fucking... the fucking video of him where he's, like, yelling at the crowd whenever he's, like, going to bowl, and he's like, would you please stop moving? And, like, nobody's moving. And the guy's like, dude, I can't, like... He's like, I'm not over there. Like, the guy isn't over there like, John Cena, you can't see me or anything. Like, the guy, like, moves an inch. He's like, can you please stop moving, please? Please. That's right, I did it! Who do you think you are? I am!
Fucking Pete Weber.
Fucking Pete Weber. And with that being said, welcome back to another episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox and Xbox Game Pass, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us wherever you get a podcast and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show and video games alike. Just a little tag team action tonight. We got Mike P-Pack with us tonight. Just him and I. Mike, fill me up. You've been back in the gloomy state of Pennsylvania right now. Normally PA is pretty dope in terms of the nature around it, but this time of year when it's like not really snowing and it's just fucking cold, it's just like gloomy and shitty out. Like, it's dreary. It's depressing. But you've been back in this state. You've been back for Colorado for a while. I better hear about some video games now. You better have played some video games. So when I ask you what's good, what's going on, and what have you been playing, I want to hear what you've been playing.
Yeah, I've been playing. I've been working on my Ninja Gaiden Black speed runs off of stream. Just working, like, tightening out my boss fights, getting some of the route memorized, and trying to perfect the little things about it. I've been playing some Smite, NHL with some friends, just dabbling here and there. Played some tabletop sim with Adam. Nothing too crazy, nothing new. Age of Empires, just kind of mixing it up. This is a time of year where I've just been kind of throwing whatever I wanted to play in there, and I haven't been too committed to one certain thing. So It's been a fun time, and it's been nice to get a little bit of a variety incoming, but it's time for me to start chipping away at the backlog. So Pathologic 2 and a couple other games are going to feel my wrath here very shortly because I need to get some of that stuff played.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was actually working on that today in terms of, like, putting together, like, okay, I have these games in my backlog that I really want to play because we don't really have anything major coming out until March. Like, the major must-have title that the first one of this year, at least in my opinion, that I'm like, I'm buying this day one, like, not, I'll wait till it goes on sale. To me, personally, is Doom Eternal. And that's, like, right smack dab middle of March, which is great because, you know, and we'll kind of talk, there's a few news articles that kind of wanted to talk about the delays and whatnot going on, but it in a way, for the gamer in 2020, it's nice because, like, it gives me time, like you, kind of this space to, like, okay, I can chip away at some games that, you know, I've wanted to play, but, you know, I just haven't had time to, in terms of there have been either other games I really want to play, or in your case, you know, I had to grind some Halo, I was playing this, I was working on my speed runs, like, things like that, where it's like, now, like, okay, I have that wiggle room that I can, you know, put some time aside and check out these games that I've been wanting to for a while. So I've been working on that list as well. But, you know, fill me in. I see you've been playing a lot of Smite, and I've had you talk about it before on the show, but, you know, you've been playing it now for a few weeks. Like, it hasn't just been now like, oh, I picked it up just to summon the play. It seems like you've been playing it semi-consistently. What's the hook for you that keeps you coming back to Smite? Because I feel like it's that one games as a service title that really flies under the radar. It had its moment in the sun. It felt like towards the beginning of this generation, at least, that I felt like being a free-to-play game, and a lot of people were on it, especially towards the beginning of the Xbox's life cycle, the Xbox One, I mean, where there weren't a ton of games to play. Like, what made that stand out for you now in 2020 as a game for, I know you play with you and your brother and whatnot, but, what about that keeps you coming back to that game over other games?
It's pretty much strictly the fact that I have a group of friends that plays it, and it's something that we all can play and enjoy. So the group of my brother and a couple of his friends that are my friends, we play NHL, and when you get sick of that game, or sometimes we don't even want to play it for a lot of reasons, but we'll switch over to Smite because we're all varying skill levels in all the games. Like, even in NHL, I would say, like, me and my brother are the two best on the team, and then there's people below us, while we have a big dichotomy of skilled players in hockey, sometimes you get sick of that game, so you want to switch it up and go to Smite. And then again, when you go to Smite, there's some of us that are pretty good and some of us that aren't so good, but moreover, it's just a good game that we can 5-stack a queue with all 5 of us, and we can play the roles we want to play, and we work as a team, and it's a lot of fun. So, me having my prowess in shooters like I have, I'll play some Call of Duty here and there with those guys because a couple of them have Call of Duty, but like I can't play Halo with those guys because I just can't. Like, I try, but as far as playing casually, I don't really play casually. So
right, yeah. And that's always been the issue that you and I have had when playing. Like, yeah, I like to be competitive with it. I want to win. I don't want to just play to lose or whatever. But like, that's always been my struggle with Halo. Like, I know the maps pretty well, but call-outs better than I do. Placement, spawn times better than me. Like, where I'm not as in tune with that stuff where, maybe you and your brother's group know some of that, but there's always that one person who's just like, I'm just here to have fun with it. And like,
right.
And that's okay. Like, both sides are okay to be balls deep in it and to also just want to kind of scratch the surface of it.
Exactly, and it just kind of fills that void. It spreads that dichotomy where it's like, okay, like we can all play this game because, we're all pretty decent at it or whatever, and we don't necessarily need to, like we do have a guy on our team that's very good, but I have gotten a lot better at mid and solo and carry, so I'm probably one of the better players on the team now, is just as far as like just playing the game. But again, when it comes to things of this nature, even with you, like, there's a reason why when I play video games, I mean, I always did have a little bit of a knack for it. I was always pretty solid, but I spent a ton of time of my life playing video games and getting better at it and perfecting my craft, if you will. So, like, there's a lot of people out there that, they might be good at one game or good at this game, but I'm good at a lot of games because I've spent a lot of time spreading my time out. Now, I mean, as far as shooters are concerned, like even when we would play Overwatch or Rainbow Six Siege, it wasn't like you were bad, but I was placing so high because I've put so many manpower hours into playing first-person shooters that I'm just inherently better than a lot of people from the get-go just because of it.
Right.
And that's no disrespect or anything. It's just people put time into a lot of different things in life, which is perfectly fine, and everyone's life's their own. Whereas I put a shit ton of my time into just strictly playing video games. So
right, you put and more specifically, you put more time into esports titles. More, and especially first-person shooters. For me, I put a lot of time into more single-player games and things like that, and that's cool. And we have crossovers in both, but and that's what's just nice about gaming right now to me, that there's literally so many avenues that people can go down, that there is a niche group for anybody. Like, if you like a certain style of first person shooter, like if you really like a tactical, skill based shooter, you're either looking at Counter-Strike, you're looking at Siege, you're looking at something like that. If you like if you like more of a deathmatch style shooter that is still focused heavy in esports, but can also spread its wings a little bit and fill in various casual aspects, Halo's there for you. There's also Rocket League. There's also like you were saying, Smite as well. Like, there's so many different avenues. There's 50 different MOBAs out there now that, like, really, there's so many different avenues of esports alone, let alone every other genre of video game out there. So it's just such a good time to be a gamer, in my opinion. Like, there's just so many different avenues to go down. But my end, really, like I said, it's pretty much been status quo since last week. I did finish Death Stranding. Holy fuck, was that an experience. Friend of the show, Mike Collins, who was on here previously, go check out the episode he was on, texted him after because I thought he had started it. At least last time I talked to him, I thought he said he had started at one point. So I texted him. I was like, did you finish, or have you played Death Stranding or finished it or whatever? And he was like, we actually just started up again last night. And, you know, I got pissed off at the first few hours, but I'm getting back into it. I was like, literally, you sound like me like a little over a week ago. I just rolled credits on now after putting it down before, like, right around Thanksgiving to play Jedi Fallen Order, and came back to it, and now I've finished it and pushed through it, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. There were parts of it that I didn't enjoy, and I understand the criticisms, but it's one of those games that I'm just very happy to have it exist, because it took somebody who has been heralded as one of the best creative minds in gaming over the past, 20 years or so, and gave him a blank check and said, go wild, and supported whatever wild vision he has. So I think the premise of, or, what has gone into this game and what this game is important to the gaming landscape. And I hope more, more first-party publishers in terms of hardware manufacturers who also do their own first-party games, like a Nintendo, like a Xbox, take note of that. Not necessarily fucking weird-ass Death Stranding, but just letting somebody go free reign on that. But I don't want to dwell on that too long. That's a PS4 game, and this is a, Xbox-centric show. But one thing that my fiance and I did finish up was The Walking Dead, the final season of it, Telltale's Walking Dead, and technically, I guess, Skybound Games' Walking Dead. Finished that up last night. Holy shit, what a ride. Absolutely stellar. Cannot recommend it enough. I'm surprised, actually, it hasn't gone on to Game Pass yet, because there's literally every other season on there. And I highly recommend going through it. The first season of The Walking Dead is one of the, if you ask me, a top 50, potentially 25 game of the past decade, in my opinion.
Wow, okay.
It's I personally still put The Wolf Among Us ahead of it, because I think, but that's also my personal taste, because I think that narrative and that style of narrative that's told and the noir aspect of that game touched me a little more. I never had that pull for necessarily zombie, media with zombies, I guess. Like,
right.
The Walking Dead TV series and the graphic novel run. Never really got into them, but this pulled me in and made me want to care, because I really did love Lee and Clementine's story and the way that it was capped off at the end. But this made me care about zombies and whatnot. But yeah, can't stress enough. Go check that out. It's on Game Pass. The first 3 seasons are on Game Pass. Season 1, Season 2, New Frontier is Season 3. So, go check those out, and then you can buy Season 4 of it for like $10 or $20, something like that. But cannot recommend it enough. It's awesome. And then we're actually, I think, going to start tonight, Life is Strange. We started for like 10 minutes once before, and she was like falling asleep, so we shut that off. We're just going to start a new save, because I told her I really want to go in and really try that again, because I know it's a game that I'm going to like, and those Telltale-esque graphic episodic adventure games are something great that we could both play. That gets her more into gaming and lets me play more video games as well. So so it's kind of a win-win, and she's into it. So I'm looking forward to starting that tonight. But before we get into the news, a little bit of housekeeping. Normally this is where I give our free game giveaway, but guess what? We're giving that away at the end of this episode. So no free game giveaway. Skipping that. But make sure you listen to the end of the episode, because we will be pulling one lucky winner to win a free game. But you got to listen through to the show. I mean, I guess technically you fucking fast forward. Forget it. Just listen to the end of the show, and you can win a free game. But next week, we will announce our next giveaway that we're going to do, and it might be pretty damn cool. I'm just saying. I don't know. You might want to listen. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast to make sure you are up to date with all the giveaways we do. That being said, let's head into the news, Mike. We got a couple news stories here before we go into our main topic of the show. First one up here. Xbox boss and team are currently in Japan to talk and listen about gaming in 2020 and beyond. I feel like we just talked about this or just said maybe this is an area they're going to focus in. I wonder. Anyways, this comes from Arnott Vanderveld at WCCF Tech. Go over there, make sure you give Arnott a click over there. As always, links will be in the description to go over there and give everybody clicks, views, all that jazz. Keep the lights on, I'm sure, for them. So, Xbox head Phil Spencer and his team are currently in Japan to talk and listen to publishers and studios about gaming in 2020 and beyond. Spencer took to Twitter overnight to share that it feels great to be back in Japan this year. According to Microsoft's Vice President of Gaming, the excitement and energy among studios and publishers about the future of gaming is strong. Quote, great to be back in Japan with the team talking and listening to amazing studios and publishers about 2020 and beyond. Really strong energy and excitement here about gaming's future. Back in March of last year, Spencer visited Japan and Korea to talk to publishers about E3 2019. The exact results of those talks are speculation, but following Spencer's trip last year, we did see some of the Yakuza games arriving on Xbox Game Pass. These titles were initially only available on PlayStation, but Sega later brought them to PC and Xbox One as well. So, let's just recap here. I wanted to bring this up as we just kind of recently talked about on the show and how the Japanese market has always been a struggle for Microsoft and Xbox, the Xbox team, over the years. But let's just kind of run through some of the recent announcements of traditional Japanese titles coming to Xbox in the very near future, really specifically this year, 2020. So if you remember at XO19, we had the announcements of Yakuza, basically the beginning Yakuza games, Yakuza 0, Kiwami, and Kiwami 2. Kiwami, the original Kiwami, is like a remake of the first, so I actually am really looking forward to play that because I've wanted to play those games for a long time, so this is really good because guess what? They're coming to Game Pass as well. So a shit ton of Final Fantasy titles are coming to the system and Xbox Game Pass, if we remember correctly, including 7, 8 remastered, 9, 10 and 10-2, 12, 13, 13-2, Lightning Returns, which is another fucking Final Fantasy 13 game, which is mind-boggling that, like, we struggled to get a second season of The Wolf Among Us, but we got fucking 15 Final Fantasy 13 games. So, and Final Fantasy 15, which has always been on Xbox One since its release, but also, too, basically all of the mainline and side Kingdom Hearts titles as well, with Kingdom Hearts 1.5 and 2.5, which includes final mix versions of the first two games and a lot of side stories, along with 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue. So they announced, too, that Phantasy Star Online 2 as well at last year's E3 was coming, which is a pretty big deal for that audience for that. That game hasn't come watched yet. To be honest, that is a big deal. So with word coming from the horse's mouth that at least meetings with more Japanese developers are happening, how important do you think this market will be for driving the future of Xbox into more homes from 2020 and on, especially being the start of next gen? And just for some context too, as we kind of start this discussion, Sony has sold 8.8 million PS4s in Japan since its release, and that's of January of this year, so very recently, while Microsoft has only sold an estimated 141,000 Xbox Ones as of June of last year. So I'm asking you, Mike, how important do you think this market will be for Xbox heading into the next generation?
Yeah, I think it's a situation where it's of paramount importance. I mean, when you have such a poor amount of sales in a certain region, it's no secret that you'd be looking to increase your sales in that particular area. Mm-hmm. And this is something where you can talk about one of the big differences between the consoles as far as RPG games. We know JRPGs are one of the selling points for Sony. It's one of the reasons why people go to PlayStation sometimes over the Xbox. So it seems like a really no-brainer. It seems like a great area to, if you're looking for an area to try to reclaim or grow your console and grow, if there's business potential there. I mean, obviously you look at the sales number and they're so polar opposite. There's little to no Xbox Ones being sold in Japan this generation. It's just like a no-brainer. This is such like an elementary move, but it also is a situation where while it's completely elementary and it's like a smart basic move for business 101, it's something that Xbox just kind of has to swallow their pride and figure out what the best way to put themselves in that market is. And that's what they're doing. It's no secret that Xbox One struggled this generation. And I think that Xbox, like we've said over the episodes and all the episodes we've done, Xbox is looking forward to the next gen and what they can do to um, get back on top, or at least on an even playing field with Sony. And this is
Mhm.
a great first step, in my opinion. I think they're doing the right things, and I think this will open up some possibilities for those games that people are buying Sony for. It's going to give them opportunities for Xbox. And let's face it, while Sony has a big like a big dollar sign beside them for opportunities for their devs, I would almost be inclined to say that Xbox would have a bigger um, budget for developers from Japan to make
Mhm.
their games that they want to make. So it's just exciting, and I'm excited to see what they're willing to do and get figured out here with Japan, and see what they can muster up to bring some more players to Xbox.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And just also as some context too, you bring up a point, just in general, the Xbox One has not sold well, and there's a reason why Xbox doesn't formally give out, at least pretty normally, they don't give out updates on their unit sales for the Xbox One because they're not good overall in terms of the whole generation. But just to kind of throw in some more context too here, and this is coming via Famitsu, a very reputable publication in Japan for the gaming industry. Just looking at past other Microsoft systems, the Xbox 360 sold 1.614 million units over in Japan as of 2014. And really, the original Xbox, 472,000, just about 473,000 units as of 2005. So, like, it's no surprise, especially how this console generation with only 140,000 units sold over in Japan. It is no surprise that you haven't seen support from Japanese game developers. You haven't seen a lot of JRPGs that you traditionally find on PlayStation titles. Hell, for alone, looking at Sony's numbers here, the PlayStation 2 sold 21 million units. The PlayStation 3 basically sold 10 to 1 to that system with almost 10.5 million units sold. And the PlayStation 4 right now at 8.8 million units sold. So it's no surprise that you don't see the support. But I think now that this plays into, once again, this narrative that that Microsoft has been building with the next generation of Xbox, they want their system to be a home for everyone. They don't care how you get into their ecosystem, whether it's on the Xbox One, whether it's on Xbox One X, whether it's on a Series X, whether it's going to be on Lockhart, whether it's Project X Cloud. This seems to be them just wanting to, and almost the way that Sony is handling a lot of their stuff, where it's they're casting a wide net. They want to bring everyone in, even if even if at first they don't see a lot of sales for those numbers, because of right now there only being 140,000 Xboxes out in the wild this generation over in Japan. They're building. They wipe the building clean, and they're building a new foundation. They want to build that mansion on top of it. It's almost like a rebuild for a sports team. You clean house and you start from scratch, and you're going to suck for a couple years, but you're going to build back up. And you're starting to see that foundation start to come really, really together as we get closer to next gen, and you're seeing more titles come out that you traditionally wouldn't. But I never thought I'd see a Yakuza game on a Xbox platform, but that's great because they're once again saying, you know what, there's not a lot of people on our platform now, but if we're building the right way and we're building the strong foundation, we could potentially have a large audience that's coming here, and they're going to want as many experiences as possible. So, and that's, like you said, Microsoft has deep pockets. Microsoft has tons and tons of fucking money. So that's why they didn't just wipe away the Xbox One like a lot of console manufacturers would, like Sega, like, to be honest, like Google's going to do with Stadia here pretty soon, because Google likes to abandon stuff that doesn't work right off the bat. So it's going to be interesting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more diversity on the Xbox system, because it has, I think, been shoehorned in certain areas, but the more experiences available, the better, if you ask me. So let's head into our next topic here, Mike, our next news article. Dying Light 2, delayed with no new release date. This comes by Matt Purslow via IGN. Go over there, give a clink, Jesus. Give a click over there to Matt on IGN, link in the description. So, developer Techland has announced that it has delayed the launch of Dying Light 2. The zombie survival game was originally due to release, quote, spring 2020, and Techland has offered no indication as to when it now plans to release the game. Posted on Twitter, a statement from CEO Paul Marchuka said, "We were initially aiming for a spring 2020 release with Dying Light 2, but unfortunately we need more development time to fulfill our vision. We will have more details to share in the coming months and will get back to you as soon as we have more information." Dying Light 2 has never been given a firm release date, but the spring 2020 window was fast approaching. By not providing an updated release date or window, Techland has freed itself from time constraint and, in theory, given itself indefinite time in order to bring Dying Light 2 to the standards the team was chasing. While internally things are no doubt more complicated, it's clear that the team has dedicated more time is required to work on the project. So, with so many titles now being pushed from their initial spring 2020 release date, including Cyberpunk 2077 to September 17th and Marvel's Avengers, as we reported on last week, to September 4th, Cyberpunk didn't make the cut. Literally the day after we recorded, it got delayed naturally, so we couldn't report on that. But do you think these dates could potentially hurt sales due to consumers either wanting to purchase their next-gen systems to then play these games, knowing that both Sony and Microsoft have confirmed some level of backwards compatibility with their consoles, thinking, oh, I'm going to wait until the new console comes out, then buy it so I can play it in the best way possible? Or will, kind of deep, lengthy experiences like Cyberpunk do the reverse and make consumers more hesitant in buying their next-gen system yet, knowing that, hey, I got a full plate right now with Cyberpunk. I may just wait on my next Xbox. I can play on my Xbox One X right here or my PC or whatever. I don't necessarily have to hurry out and get the new one if I could play this here for another 100 hours. What do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely a valid question in my opinion. I do believe it's worth noting and worth thinking about because when you're delaying games like this, obviously we have, again, this is another topic we've gone on at length, maybe not gone on at length about, but we have all kind of, poured out our support for devs that decide to push dates back like this. I do think that you raise a good question that there is a potential for gamers to kind of hold off on either A, buying their game because they want to get the new console, or B, sticking with the old console and just buying the game. And I think it is a serious concern because Cyberpunk 2077 is one of those games that everyone was kind of looking for as like the last big thing of the generation. People were really excited for it for the summer. I do think it's a close one. It almost feels like a coin flip situation because sometimes consumers can be really funky, and with previous releases of new consoles, there have been issues with these consoles upon release. I think it's worth thinking about too, where whether it be the Red Ring of Death or the Xbox One disc tray problem where the disc trays weren't working and all that kind of stuff kind of could play into it. But ultimately, I think what'll happen is I think you'll see people maybe rent the game. So I think like Redbox.
They're done.
What's up? Redbox is done doing demos?
They're done doing games now.
Okay. Well,
which I think randomly, I thought I was going to bring that up on a show at one point. Maybe I'm sure something else a little more like newsworthy, I guess, came up. But yeah, they announced a couple months, maybe not a couple months, maybe a couple weeks ago that they were ceasing renting games. I guess that's just a sign of the times, but yeah, it was kind of out of nowhere. They were just randomly like, yeah, we're going to stop doing games now, I guess. And yeah.
Well, still, at the end of the day, I don't believe that...
Well, there's still, like, GameFly and shit like that you can rent, and people do take advantage of that. You'd be surprised.
Yeah, I think, again, I suppose it's just depending on situation. But I do think you'll see a customer base that might hesitate to buy the game, and they might say... I really want the Xbox One or the new Xbox, the new Xbox, because, I think with the new games that are coming out, whether it be Halo, and now you're getting pushed back to like Halo coming out, Halo Infinite, hopefully coming out of fall or holiday of 2020 on a new system. Like now you're getting into that dangerous territory when you're looking at a launch date of September 17th. You're starting to get pushed back to like the new the new franchise game for Xbox potentially. So it is a sketchy situation. All in all things considered,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that a game of this magnitude, I don't think it's going to affect sales in one way or the other too much. A game like Marvel's Avengers, however, feels like a game that could suffer greatly. While it's being anticipated and it's excited, I would think that in September 17th versus September 4th, I think customers are going to look at that September 4th date and say, you know what? I can afford Cyberpunk. I can afford that $60 game that I know I'm going to get my money out of.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, like I need to start thinking about how am I going to buy this new console.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the game that's actually could take a toll here. I think Cyberpunk 2077 is going to do fine sales wise.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be plenty of people out there that are going to cough up the money for it and the new
Yeah.
system. But it is worth noting that if a consumer is more interested in Cyberpunk and less interested in the new console and the new Halo and things of that nature, I do think that you could see the console sales take a hit, but I don't think it's going to be enough that you're going to notice a huge difference. But I do stand on a hill that I think Marvel's Avengers will be the one that kind of takes a little bit of a hit. Because if it's going to work on the new consoles, then why wouldn't people wait until they get the new console and then get that game for Christmas or on a Black Friday sale?
Yeah.
Because September 4th is far enough from Black Friday that people are going to think that that's going to happen, which is another thing that Cyberpunk getting pushed back all the way to fall, people could have that illusion that Cyberpunk's going to take a little bit of a hit in price to Black Friday. And even if it's a price point of like $49.99, people will still wait for Black Friday for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's definitely a toss up. It's a intriguing question. It's really hard to kind of be on one side or the other. I'm too flip floppy on it, honestly, to be like to provide you with a good answer. But I feel like I gave you the support for why I believe what I believe anyway.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be very interesting with these games, especially when you think. CD Projekt Red has already come out and said previously that, hey, don't anticipate a remastered version of Cyberpunk 2077 coming out. Don't expect this to, it almost like kind of like The Last of Us did with the PlayStation 4 when it first launched. Like 6 months after it came out, they released a remastered version of The Last of Us because it came out so close to the launch of the PS4, like what? 4 months out, 5 months out, something like that. I believe it launched in June of 2013, and then next-gen consoles launched in November, something like that. But they said, hey, don't expect that. So I kind of see the side where, okay, like, well, this game's coming out, we're not worried about it. We're putting it out there. People are going to play this no matter what. And I agree to that. I don't think sales aren't going to be hurt by this. If anything, more people, I think, are going to support it now because of gamers being trying to be more consumer or be more friendly towards developers in terms of, because so many people are more in the know now with gaming of how games are developed, how games are marketed, all the process that it takes to develop a game, at least have somewhat of an idea of it. And what's interesting about that thought is, too, Jason Schreier just put out, and I'm actually going to put this in the description as well. I think it's a required reading. He put out a piece on Kotaku last Friday, and it talked about that actually delayed games actually most of the time provide more crunch because now it gives developers an idea of, oh, we originally thought we were going to have to, axe this feature and this feature because of that, or axe this polish. Now we can include all that. So, yeah, we're going to need to work a little bit longer, just as long as we've been doing, just for a few more months. So it kind of does delay crunch at times a little bit, especially with the studios that are notorious for it, the Naughty Dogs and different things like that. And at least and CD Projekt Red is also confirmed, yeah, with that, there's going to be some crunch. And they're very upfront with it, but thanks to Polish labor laws, if they're overtime, they're forced to pay overtime rates. No matter if you're salary, hourly, whatever, you're forced to get paid for overtime, which is good. So that at least lightens the load a little bit. But I don't think sales aren't going to be hurt by that. If anything, it's going to be better. But and at the same time, though, I could see where people think like, hey, I was waiting to buy a new system, or I wanted to play this game. Now it's coming up right to a new system. I could save the $60, save it up, and wait till it comes out with the system. I could play it in even better capacity. I could see where people are like that, but at the same time, we also don't know officially, like, Xbox has said, yeah, we're supporting backwards compatibility on all 4 generations of past 3 generations of Xbox on ours. And PlayStation's kind of said the same, at least on PS4. It sounds like they're going to do more than just PS4, but with right now, just PS4, they confirmed. But, you know, like the 360 was whenever it first did backwards compatibility. It wasn't every game that worked. It was only some games. So I'm sure Cyberpunk's going to be one of those games, but is that something that's going to be available at launch, or is it going to be something that's patched in after, in an update saying these games were added to backwards compatibility 3 months down the road? And then at that point, well, you know, most people probably had played that game. Most people probably wouldn't wait to play that game if you want to play that game.
Then you're starting to get into the, like, you're talking about 3 months after release the new console. Now you're talking about almost 6 months post launch.
There's a lot with it. So I don't think it's going to hurt. I don't think you know, that hurts either next gen systems or this. I think they each have room to breathe. And I each think they're going to be fine because more than likely people are going to, if they're hyped about next gen systems, most people are enthusiasts of gaming, usually buy it right around launch. So they're going to go out there and they're going to have their own launch lineup of games, and yeah, most of them are crap, but there's going to be those few Breath of the Wild-esque titles that stand out that you're going to want to pick up to play on that new system. So I don't think it's going to hurt. New tech and new software kind of live in each their own ecosystem at times. I think both will be fine. So heading into the last news article before we get to our big topic, this one should be relatively quick. Xbox's Project xCloud adds Destiny 2, Halo the Master Chief Collection, and more titles to the service. This comes by Matt Brown via Windows Central. So, Microsoft has expanded its lineup of Xbox One titles available under the Project xCloud preview, seemingly welcoming over a dozen new games to its streaming library. The ongoing invite-only test service full-fledged Xbox One gaming over the cloud to mobile devices, now adding Destiny 2, Sid Meier's Civilization 6, various Telltale published titles, among other Xbox titles. Project xCloud initial tests started back in October, since maintaining a vast library of Xbox One titles, as Microsoft prepares for the scheduled 2020 public release. While currently limited to Android devices in the US, UK, and Korea, it recently resumed its Korean expansion alongside SK Telecom, sending out further invites and introducing more compatible titles. That rollout appears to have spilled west, and we've spotted several new experiences on the gaming streaming service. The full list of the new Xbox One titles now available on Project xCloud testers include Halo the Master Chief Collection, Destiny 2, Sid Meier's Civilization 6, Batman the Enemy Within the Complete Seasons, Episode 1 through 5, Batman the Telltale Series the Complete Season, Episodes 1 through 5, The Wolf Among Us, Wasteland 2 Director's Cut, The Surge, Super Hot, Portal Knights, Goner Blueberry Edition, Kingdom 2 Crowns, Sparklight, Tracks, the Train Set Game, and Train Simulator World 2. So it's crazy to think a service like Project xCloud, that is still very much in its beta release in a testing form, is providing more content in a stable fashion than a full-fledged, formally released service like Google Stadia. So, like, with how strong the test has been with Project xCloud, where do you see Project xCloud fitting into Microsoft's next-gen plans in terms of the Xbox Series X? Will it still be viewed as just a secondary approach to a traditional box in your living room, or will this platform even play into the rumored Lockhart system as a more standard form of gaming? This may be the main form that you game with. Real quick, what do you think, Mike?
Yeah, the development or the move to Project xCloud definitely feels like a direct answer to Sony PlayStation's availability for you to stream games to your phone and things of that nature, which obviously just kind of makes sense. The games that they listed is actually a pretty big deal, just because, like, first-person shooters, like you've said, can kind of be a little sketch on it. So I'm wondering what kind of optimization was done there, or if it's more of like a strictly casual mess around in social, or I'm sure it will be, but I'm talking like maybe not even be able to play multiplayer, maybe just stick to the campaign, which would be fine. Destiny 2, also another one that's like wow, I can't believe that actually is going to xCloud. It's kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Civ 6 makes complete and total sense. The Batman games make completely sense, the two that are listed. The
Mm-hmm.
one being The Enemy Within, the next one being a Telltale series. The
Wolf Among Us. I mean, those are Among
that
Us
makes
was
sense.
on. There was a mobile port of that as well. So like,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
All that kind of makes sense. Some of the other games, Portal Knights, Super Hot, they're pretty low budget as far as like the actual game system, like the specs. You know what I mean? Like
Right,
they're
they're
relatively decent.
Like Super Hot has a VR port to it, but the Super Hot title is an indie developed game. We're talking there's a lot of these games that are independent games or lower scale games. We're not talking about the Destiny 2 massive AAA third party budget project. We're talking, smaller dev teams that are working on this with limited budgets.
Right, exactly. So, all in all, like the technology is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a reasonable answer to the fact that Nintendo has gone completely mobile. Obviously you can mount it, so let's not forget that. But
Right.
it does seem like, they're kind of answering Sony's push for mobility and Nintendo's full mobility movement. Definitely feels like they're trying to answer those two competitors, if you will. It makes sense. You have said in a previous episode, if you guys want to go check that one out, Travis here has told us about his experience with the xCloud situation and how good it's been.
It's great. It truly is great. Like it was, I've been using game streaming more and more. Like I've noticed in the past 6 months, I've used it more and more. I've used now that Steam Link has transitioned from the traditional box like Adam has, and it's gone to an app format where you can get the app on Apple TV, you could stream to another Steam client on a PC. I've used that when going over to my fiance at night, like when I was balls deep into Witcher 3, like I knew that was a game unless I had some kind of, I was able to take it with me to her house. Like I wasn't going to finish that within couple week fashion. It was going to take a while, so like I would take that. I could play on my laptop. Same with remote play for Sony. Like when I was doing Death Stranding, if I didn't want to drag my PlayStation over there, I could pull it up. They have a app on the computer, on PC, on Mac, there's one on your phone now, tablets, whatever, that you could use a Bluetooth to hook up a controller to. It all works good enough. Like it all gets the job done good enough. xCloud, though, you could really see this is where Microsoft is flexing its own in-house tech muscles, where it's like, you could tell that Sony is a great hardware manufacturer. Microsoft, though, has been doing the infrastructure game for years, where you could physically, while I'm playing this, say, I could tell this is actual infrastructure that's built not for just leisure. They're using tech that has been used in massive corporate settings for years. Like it was pushing that service much more forward in the way that you could play on that, at least.
Right. Yeah, it also feels like they're kind of jockeying for a setup for whenever it is time for the new system to come out. It definitely feels like it might be something that they're trying to make sure is off the ground and ready to rock and roll whenever that new system does come out. So it's definitely interesting. I'm excited to see what happens with the future, because with the new console coming out, it almost feels like they would definitely have to have it ready to go as soon as the new Xbox launches, right? So I'm interested to see what they, get going there, and we'll see what happens with it. But it's definitely exciting times for Microsoft going forward. It definitely feels like this generation, they're putting themselves in great positions going forward.
No, definitely. And I wouldn't be shocked if Lockhart comes out. I don't think we're going to see that launched alongside. I don't think we're going to see Lockhart launched alongside Xbox Series X, because I think that's going to, me personally, I think that can muddy the water a little bit too much on. I think each thing could cannibalize itself. Like it could be putting each of them out to die, because then you're giving not consumers too many options, because more options is never a bad thing, I guess, but like it might just muddy the messaging for Microsoft, and I think they want to play that a little closer to the chest this time around. But say, we get the public launch of Project xCloud this year, and it's renamed to something, whatever we want to call it, if it's just xCloud or if it's Xbox game streaming or whatever, insert marketing name here. I can absolutely see them turning around next year and releasing a Lockhart really being, for holiday 2021 or something like that. Hey, you want another option to get into our ecosystem and play the newest Xbox Series X games that are now coming out, we're getting exclusives for this. You could do it at a much lower price point through streaming, and here is the rumored Lockhart. It's literally just a box, the size of your hand or something like that, and it's a streaming box, but it's built to work hand in hand with Microsoft's streaming infrastructure, where it's built for that, and it's optimized for their specific infrastructure for streaming, that it works flawlessly. Because right now, yeah, it's streaming. It all depends on your connection a lot as well. But I've tried multiple different connections. And both are stable connections, different things like that. I've tried them all when it comes to streaming, and it is noticeably better and more stable with Microsoft's xCloud, like hands down. And it's just better than good enough, which stands out whenever you're doing game streaming, to me at least. Now granted, I still would never play like a first-person shooter streaming, but
yeah,
if I want to play like what we're going to get into in our big topic here in a minute, like if I want to play Skyrim, if I want to play a RPG like that, or something that's going to consume a lot of my time, and, people like me who like trophies and achievements, if I want to work on getting more of those, I could do that on the go. Like, it's better than that, where it's actually like, oh, okay, I can actually sit here and play this game, like, and it's not, oh, I could see some screen tearing, or I could see some artifacting, I could see, no, you don't have to worry about that. You may get a hiccup, once in a blue moon, but it works pretty well, and it's noticeably better. There's less input lag, things like that, where the latency is minimal. Like, it's much, much, much more noticeably better in terms of that, especially. So, with that being said, Mike, let's head into our big topic. And so, kind of starting this off, so a recent job posting at Bethesda Game Studio popped up, and it's kind of made the rumor, or it's made the news cycle a little bit. And it's kind of pointed towards that Elder Scrolls 6 is nearing the point of being in full development. With a number of programming positions opening up that kind of that market themselves as pushing the bleeding edge of RPG development for the PC and consoles, and the implementation of new gameplay features with player and character behaviors, combat and mechanics, user interfaces, all that jazz. In addition to that, there was also another job opening that popped up with BGS that is recruiting for a video editor to create trailers for its games, implying that Starfield, their new sci-fi IP that's, I would imagine, an RPG, is almost ready to be kind of fully unveiled to the world, with a marketing campaign including TV spots, gameplay featurettes, etc., etc. So, why am I bringing this up? I think it's because this is truly the first time Bethesda Game Studios, not the publishing end, but the traditional Bethesda game that is developed by their Bethesda Game Studios, they haven't been in a position like this for quite some time. They're potentially getting ready to launch their first truly original single-player RPG IP for the first time in 20 plus years, and then also enter full development on the next entry in one of the biggest gaming franchises of all time with the Elder Scrolls. So the past few years, in really a post kind of Fallout 4 timeframe, Bethesda has really kind of been viewed as more focused and rightful praise, in my opinion, for their publishing arm and their approach, with kind of bringing titles like Doom, the 2016 version of Doom, Dishonored 2, the rebirth of Wolfenstein, The Evil Within, Prey, and, and more especially after the last Bethesda Game Studios developed title, Fallout 76, was pretty much unanimously negatively viewed by critics and fans alike. They became, I think, are now becoming more viewed as a publisher, and they're not necessarily viewed as a developer anymore. But I think this is where they're at that crossroads that the hardcore fans still remember them being like me and you, we remember the glory days of Bethesda where we didn't necessarily hear about a lot of the titles that they published. It was more about the titles they developed. The Elder Scrolls, we're talking Morrowind, Oblivion, then Fallout 3 comes along, and then even heading into Skyrim for what it is. But I think they just feel like they're at a crossroads right now of where they want to go with this. And me personally, I want to talk about kind of how they get back to being viewed as, or how they could potentially, or even just what the future in general holds for Bethesda on the game development side, not necessarily their publishing arm, because in my opinion, they're really well off on that end. They're from now, just today, we're recording this on Tuesday of this week. Just today, previews of Doom Eternal went live. That media publications can put out there. The embargo for previews was lifted, and it is getting rave reviews and praise in terms of the previews, the first 3 hours that they played, that a lot of people are throwing GOTY around right now with that, and that is massive praise, and that's a big thing to throw around in a year that we got Final Fantasy VII Remake, Cyberpunk 2077 coming out, The Last of Us Part 2, all these crazy titles, and Doom Eternal is being thrown around with that phrase. So, today I want to talk about the future of Bethesda game studios, their home-developed studios, and how they can either potentially find their identity again with the next console generation, or just where they go in the future to getting back on people's radar. So, kind of kicking off the conversation here, when you think of Bethesda game studios, not the publishing arm, like I said, but the in-house development titles, the Elder Scrolls, Fallout 3, 4, 76 we can kind of throw out, but as a whole, what do you think of? What comes to mind in terms of their strengths and weaknesses when you think Bethesda game studios titles?
Yeah, I definitely think when you're looking at games that have the Bethesda shield, if you will, I'll just refer to it as hate to be like a sports league or whatever, but I would think of like the brand or the company. So we'll just call it the Shield for right now, for lack of better terms.
Rob Lowe, big fan of the Shield, we found out this weekend.
What a hero.
He did not care about the San Francisco 49ers. Didn't care
Yeah.
about fucking the Green Bay Packers, man. Just a fan of the league, wearing his just NFL Shield hat. I mean, the bold choice. Dean Youngblood out there,
God, Dean Youngblood. But nevertheless, I definitely think, when I think of Bethesda-made games or Bethesda-developed games, I definitely begin to disconnect myself from games like Fallout New Vegas. Not that it wasn't a great game, but I know they didn't make it. I start to disconnect myself from Elder Scrolls Online. It's definitely not a Bethesda game, but they own the rights to the Elder Scrolls. And a game that comes to mind to me, or the games that come to mind, are Fallout 3 for one. Elder Scrolls Oblivion, Elder Scrolls Skyrim. It felt like it just didn't feel right. So you start to go back to Oblivion, which, I mean, we've talked at length at the beginning of how much we love that game, and we still are going to do an episode on that, and it's going to be something special. But so Fallout 3, Oblivion, Elder Scrolls 3, Morrowind, those three games in particular are like the cream of the crop, if you will. About a Mount Rushmore for Bethesda games. Hell, now this is crazy talk, but when you're talking about Bethesda or video games, period, Mount Rushmore, one of those three Bethesda games makes it up there for me. And you're talking top 5 all time. So one of those games is a top 5 game of all time. And it's fine if you don't think so as a listener. You might not be your cup of tea, but I also think that if you've never given Oblivion, or I know Oblivion, some people feel like it's the black sheep of the family, but if you were to give Oblivion or Morrowind, I just hope that these mods come out that update the graphics and everything, because those are two games that really deserve the shot and the chance that people haven't given it just because of the graphical limitations. I think that those games are everlasting. I think that they're some of the more special games of all time, and that's literally me being serious. Like, I'm not trolling, I'm not being a heel. I'm telling you straight up that those games are some of the best of all time, and that's what I think of when I think of Bethesda. Now, lately Bethesda have been suspect, if you will. Fallout 4, Fallout 76. It just doesn't feel quite right. It doesn't feel like Bethesda, so it's concerning. But that I mean, I while the legacy has somewhat become tarnished, if you will, while the shield has become a little tarnished, just because of the nature of the fact that the games that they've made recently just haven't been that great, or they haven't made them, but they've published. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's concerning. It's crazy to think that Bethesda is this far down this road. It feels like they should have kind of like Todd Howard should have known, and he should have woken up long before this period. But I think Elder Scrolls 6 is a really good chance for them to kind of get back to their roots, which, by the way, is far superior to their publishing and the companies that they hire to make games for them.
What's that? Really, what do you mean?
Like how Obsidian made Fallout New Vegas, or they've brought in outside parties primarily.
Oh, you're saying they're like, you're saying, they're Rockville, Maryland studio, they're Austin, they're like Bethesda Game Studios.
Yeah, like they're spread out studios,
yes,
not just like
they're
like
internal in-house made studios, not studios they've acquired.
Right, exactly.
Gotcha.
So going back to Rockville, Maryland, and getting back to the root of it, and I think Todd Howard, it's become a question where, and this is a legitimate question, by the way. This is something that you can begin to wonder: is if does he still have what it takes to be a game dev, or is he simply kind of like no disrespect to anyone who's passed away or anything, but is this something where it's like, is it going to be like a Steve Jobs thing where it's like, he hadn't been in the lead for, like, he had been the face of the company, but how into day-to-day stuff was he really involved with?
Yeah, and that's
beginning to be a wonder, and it's legitimate because
absolutely
you have to start wondering, like, he stands up and he basically pulls the Mr. Rogers putting a freaking clown mask on in front of the entire society that plays video games. You're talking about a situation where he's going out there and making these promises, and like the games are not even close to delivering. Even close to delivering on these promises that he's making, and he just looks like the horse's ass up there. And I guess he likes it because he keeps doing it, but at what point are you going to say enough's enough?
When you have somebody make a YouTube video, a music video for you using Fleetwood Mac's "Tell Me Lies, Tell Me Sweet Little Lies" about all of your public appearances talking about your games in the past.
And your false promises.
I agree. I actually like that thread that you put on about, how involved is Todd in the day-to-day development, because, and realistically, one person does not make a game. And that would be like saying, Reggie from Nintendo was making every game, or Shigeru Miyamoto was making every single Mario game that came out. He was making every single Zelda game. He was making every single, like he was involved with those processes, and he, at the very early stages of the life of those series, yes, he was right there with it, but game companies grow. They're just like any businesses. If they're successful, they're growing. So, more and more you're seeing Todd become even more of a public figure and doing a lot of more notable things behind, more running the actual company of the company and of the studio. And you're seeing guys like Pete Hines come out who are becoming more of public faces for the studio, more being the talking head. I use that in a loose term because that has sounds like it has a negative connotation with it, but no disrespect to them by all at any, it's just, that's the person who's giving the information now. But, it's interesting that you bring that up, because that is a lot of what people were saying. One of the big reasons why Fallout 76 was in the stage that it was, because it was launched in the state that it was because it didn't really have a direction to it. It didn't have a lead to it because it was developed by Bethesda Game Studios, but it seems like it was developed at maybe the Austin, Texas or Dallas branch of it. It wasn't necessarily right under Todd's radar in Rockville, Maryland. And like I said, one person doesn't make a game, but it's like sometimes you hear the saying a ship without a captain, you know, at what point you also do need that person who's taking charge and leading troops into battle at times. So it's really hard to say. In my opinion, when I think of Bethesda Game Studios, you know, of past, I just think of, what's the term I want to use? Unprecedented. I think of genre defining. I think of, in terms of phrases, I think, like I've said before, one of those experiences that I hold on to when I look back in my, like, all the games I played over the years, all of my gaming history, there's multiple things that stick out. One of my first being, I remember convincing my dad to buy me The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time while sitting on his lap, cutting grass with him, riding on the lawnmower with him, and being like, you know, selling him on this at like 5 years old or whatever. Like, I remember doing that. I remember, you know, getting my PlayStation 2 for the first time. But one of the things I'll always remember is the first time that you and I bought Oblivion, because we loved Morrowind so much we knew we had to have Oblivion. When your brother got his Xbox 360, was home for the summer, we ran out and bought it. First disc did not work. Had to have your mom drive all the way back out to GameStop, go get another one. But I remember coming back and putting that in and getting out of the sewers for that first time, and the world just exploding onto the world and walking out into this vast, lush, green and, you know, sky blue vista that you start walking and you stumble upon a bandit camp, and then you're heading towards Kvatch and you see the sky change, and you just look up at the sky, and I even still think it's one of the most beautiful sights in gaming, you know, looking at it with the context of it being a, you know, whatever now, 14, 15-year-old game coming up on. So, you know, I think of just this lineage of genre-defining experiences, and even with Skyrim, you know, like, granted, it bridged a gap between, you know, casual and hardcore RPGs, but maybe pushed it a little too casual. It's still one of those games that does things that nobody else does, and has really still been that when people think of, you know, fantasy-driven RPGs, they think Skyrim. That's, a lot of people associate that before even Elder Scrolls anymore. So, you know, but like you saying, you know, I think of the state of Bethesda Game Studios now, and I see the way that they have evolved, but not necessarily, in my opinion, in the right way, with, you know, the RPG genre, with Fallout 4 basically being just an action-adventure game for the most part, with RPG elements. And not that it's a bad game in that regard, if looking at it through that context. I still liked Fallout 4. It finally took me a while to actually have it click. In the past year, it finally did, fucking 4 years later. But you look at that in comparison to the past, and you see just what looks like a transition, but not necessarily in the right way, where you're not seeing as many risks being taken in terms of the actual core RPG elements and the core of what they've been known to be good at. They're taking more casual risks in terms of making the game more accessible, and in some ways that's great, because more people playing games and more people getting attached to these series is never a bad thing. But, you know, it's, when I think of genre defining in the old Bethesda, I think of taking what they're good at and evolving it with new tech and pushing the boundaries of that, comparative to just bringing, you know, the barrier down in a way, which is good, but I think there's ways to do it while not losing kind of who you truly are with your identity with gaming. But it's a complicated thing, because I still love their games. It's one of those things, I could be pissed off that we still haven't seen Elder Scrolls 6, but every time I see that, you know, hey, we're going Bethesda, we're still hosting an E3 press conference this year, you know, I'm right there listening, because they're just one of those game studios that they're always doing things that are so different, and they're giving, even on their publishing end, and I know we're not really talking about that, but their publishing end is really even still embodies what they've done previously, and that's make unique experiences or fund unique experiences in this case, where we're seeing rebirths of Doom, we're seeing the rebirth of Wolfenstein in a unique way that people are fucking digging, man. And we're seeing titles like Deathloop from Arcane Studios that are being published that is wholly unique and something never seen before. And even games like Dishonored, Prey, they're finding new life that in these IP that, you know, specifically with Prey, that nobody ever would have thought of, that people fuck with. Like, people have found an interest with them and really found a way that they've been able to breathe new life into those things, and they're willing to invest the money into it. And so kind of being a wholly new landscape to explore for the developer, you know, in your opinion, what does a space-focused RPG from Bethesda look like when kind of speaking on Starfield? We know that's their next wholly in-house developed project from Bethesda Game Studios. Fallout 76 came out. They said, next up, we got Starfield. Then after that, it's Elder Scrolls 6, what you've been asking for. But we want to do Starfield. We want to bring this new experience for the first time in 20 years. We've been thinking about this game and wanting to try this game. We're bringing it out, and we want to try it. So what does a space-focused RPG from Bethesda look like? You know, with BioWare kind of popularizing that subsect of the genre with the Mass Effect series, what would make it stand out comparatively to that? Because that's what I think. When I think space RPG, I instantly think Mass Effect, because it was done so well by BioWare, and that kind of is the flag bearer for that. But what can make it stand out? So what do you think a space explorative RPG looks like from Bethesda, knowing the context of how they develop their RPGs?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, and it's definitely something that as time wears on and we're waiting for this game to release and we talk about it more and more, it's definitely something that I'm beginning to become more and more excited with.
Definitely.
Every time we talk about it, just because it's exciting to think about. And this fresh
it's
breath
new,
of it,
it's fresh, just like you were saying, fresh.
This fresh thing that's being brought to life after 20 years definitely feels like, you know, again, you know, I love this dev. Like, I love the dev Bethesda, and I really want them to be special again. And I don't mean any disrespect, but, you know, like we were talking about when it came to Fallout 76, it almost felt like the warden at a jail left and the guards left, and it was left to the inmates to run. And it was like there was just no rule. There was no rhyme or reason for anything. It was just completely out of control. And now, again, this isn't like that little sound bit, if you record that and say like, oh my God, this guy knows nothing what he's talking about, because he's straight up bashing Bethesda and saying that nobody has any control over their studio. Like, I'm not saying this in a literal term that nobody was paying attention to what was going on. I'm saying, like, if Todd Howard's the warden and he left and the guards were left to look after and there was nobody there to give a clear voice of reason, then that's why a game like Fallout 76 gets released. But a game like Starfield, it definitely feels like the freshness of it being a new idea, Todd Howard might be more involved because it's something fresh. It's something that he wants to explore.
He's been very vocal about it. I mean, has been,
which is awesome.
You've seen him now more in interviews coming out and saying, like, I think you see that spark in him, almost like the spark that he got with when they first got and I don't want to put words in his mouth or, you know, feelings in his body, but when I see him in interviews now, he did a really, Ryan McCaffrey over at IGN, who really is the Xbox lead for the most part on, you know, he hosts Podcast Unlocked, their Xbox podcast, along with IGN Unfiltered, which is their kind of one-on-one conversations that are very loose and easy going, that they bring in, you know, prolific or bigger names in the development industry, in the gaming stratosphere, that they bring in, and Ryan will have a one-on-one with them. And he did have one with Todd Howard. I believe it was definitely in the last year, but I think it was post E3 last year, that you could tell that him talking about Starfield and kind of where it's going and the way he's looking at it, it seems like he's almost, you know, he's excited. You could see that maybe a creative spark has been lit again with that he's almost like when they, you know, recently, when they acquired the Fallout license. He was such a big fan of that franchise before, when it was in the isometric perspective, and being able to buy that up and be able to make a Fallout game and bring it to a wholly unique new perspective of it, while still keeping the heart of a Fallout series, you know, it kind of plays into that, like the Star Wars effect of, you know, having J.J. Abrams come in, somebody who loves that series, who is, you know, credits it for a lot of him getting into making films because of that series. People who care so much about that IP, bringing them in and let them, you know, put their care into making one, you usually see a lot of good results out of it. So it's exciting to see him excited about, you know, a project like that. Not to cut in on you, please continue.
No.
I just wanted to throw that in.
No, you're completely good. It feels like with Todd Howard a little more energized, and, you know, while Todd Howard has been the face of the company and he has come onto stages and lied to us for the past few years, it definitely feels like this might be different.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to say open world. Starfield would be open world. However, when you start talking about open world and space in the same sentence, it's almost like space is obviously unquantifiable. Like
there has to be some linearity to it.
Yeah, like you can't make it completely open because there's gonna be a repetitiveness to it. Even if you're like, it's gonna be, and I'm air quoting, open world, because you're talking about something that's so open that even if you were to go to any constellation, like if you were to go to any galaxy, like there's gonna be repeats. Like you're not, like, you can't just random generate so many quests. Like it's gonna be like Skyrim, where there's a million side quests that you can do, you can never run out, but at the end of the day, once you get through so many, you're gonna see the same one, right? So I think that it's going to be relatively open world to the point where the technology and the storyline that BioWare was trying to share, it wasn't possible for the first two Mass Effects. I think that it's going to be more open world, but you're going to be looking at a situation where it's going to be somewhere in between a Skyrim Oblivion open world feel, where it's going to be open and you're going to be able to make a lot of decisions that you want to make as a character. But at the end of the day, you're still going to be streamlined into certain like lines, right? Like I'm not going to say like there's going to be a fighters guild and a thieves guild. Like that's obviously not going to be the case in Starfield, but there's going to be some type of fighters guild, whether you're going to join some type of like republic where you're going to be part of making sure there's that when you're out in space, like people follow whatever laws they're going to be, or you're going to be on the other side of it. Like through all of Oblivion, or through all of Bethesda's history, you've been able to make those decisions. So I would obviously fully expect that decision to be in the player's hands. I expect there to be tailored game experiences based on those choices you make, but it's not going to be complete and totally wide open. There's going to be streamlined to it. There's going to be linear progression through each thing. But I do think that there's going to be a ton of options where it's going to almost feel open worldy while it's still going to be linear. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be incredible. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle flying around in a spaceship with the technology. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if you're going to be able to fly, or if like in Mass Effect, you'll be able to choose to quick travel to certain galaxies, and then you'll be able to fly ships here and there. I mean, you just get into the point where when you're talking about when you're talking about space, the reason why nobody's done games complete like open world in space is because the technology, and just like, I don't know whose brain you would have to hook up receptors to get enough storylines for an open world space game. I just don't. It's not possible. That's such a blank canvas that you're going to have to be pointed in what you're going to want to do. So I would expect some vision. I would expect some direction, and it's going to be linear. But I think you're obviously going to have weapons, guns, because you're going to be in a futuristic time span and a futuristic theme. It's going to be more futuristic than Fallout, obviously. But I think that they might blend the best of what Fallout has to offer and the best of what Elder Scrolls has to offer. And I think that'd be amazing. I don't think that they would include something like the VAT system from Fallout, because that is just straight up too Fallout-y. And I don't think they're going to, bring guilds over from Elder Scrolls, because again, that's too Elder Scrolls-y. But I think you're going to see a nice blend of both of those worlds birthing a new world that I think is going to be incredible and it's going to be a great experience.
I get major, like, when I see the teaser trailer of for Starfield, and really it's literally 30 seconds of all it is. It pans down on a planet with some kind of satellite that is in the spectrum, and then, like, it looks like a black hole just, like, engulfs it out of nowhere, and then it pulls up the, GIF of the Starfield logo completing the circle. I get major Interstellar vibes of that. Like, if that's just a proof of concept that they throw out there, and just kind of like the Elder Scrolls 6 teaser they put out, which we'll talk about, in a little bit, but if that's just a proof of concept that comes out, like, that's the vibe I get, almost where I wouldn't be shocked if we're seeing a level of humanism with this, and I say that in the sense of there's this grounded feel to it. It's not where, when I think Mass Effect, I do think it almost has that, like, not Halo vibe, but even more Halo vibe, or even more, like, tech-focused, heavy over-the-top, like, almost like Star Trek-y, where when I think of Interstellar, I think of, we're looking at tech that is almost real life, that, yeah, it doesn't, we're not talking, 2020 here with the tech that we're going to see, but in maybe 2200 we might, where it's how far is humankind going to evolve past that point, or we thought we'd see flying cars 30 years ago, and we obviously didn't. So, like, it gives me that vibe of realism to it almost, that not in the sense of we're going to see a Star Wars level, over the top, but almost this, like, grounded approach to it, where it's not fantasy necessarily. And I think that's going to be a big departure for them, because even in, experiences like Fallout, where we've seen that fantasy approach with some of the super mutants and things like that come up, I don't know if we're necessarily going to see that. Maybe, I'm sure there's going to be alien races that you encounter, but I feel like it's going to be more rooted in realism than in the fantasy aspect. And I think that's maybe why I see more excitement in Todd, because it's so wholly different than that. But I'm with you. It excites me because it's new. We don't know what we're going to see with it. Where with Elder Scrolls, I know what I'm going to expect to an extent. I hope they evolve on that concept a lot, but at the same time, I know what's going to happen for the most part. I have an idea, at least. Where Starfield, we don't know, and I've heard through a couple of sources that Starfield has been obviously in development for quite a while now, but the biggest hang-up has been with its development, seems like, because it is being developed on the Creation Engine, which is a modified version of the Gamebryo engine that was built for Oblivion. So it's a very old tool set that they're working with, that I would have hoped they would have advanced by now, but, I mean, hell, there's been tool sets that have been years old that people have been using, but, I just think this was the time to maybe see an advancement with that, because the one thing I keep hearing is, with the development of this game, is there's been struggles with flying in this game and the ships you're going to use, because there has to be some kind of space travel, and I imagine it sounds like there's going to be some kind of space combat. So that's what I'm hearing is the hang up. Now, who knows? Maybe they found a way to, fix that and found a way around making that feel better with flying, because I don't think the one thing that Bethesda has put out, they may put out games that have bugs with them, and really, if you ask me, in terms of truly broken games, if you want to try to say a game is truly broken, Fallout 76 was the closest they got with it, but it's still a playable game. Bethesda is still, with their wholly truly Rockville developed games, they have depth to them. They're not putting out a quick in and out 6-hour experience, and nothing wrong if those 6 hours experiences are concise and thorough on what they're being presented, but they're providing depth to this 100-hour experience, or whatever you want to call it. So I think it's going to be more based in realism than a Mass Effect. But I could see at the same time, Mass Effect was like linear open world, almost to the extent of the Outer Worlds, where Outer Worlds was quote-unquote open world, but it was more segmented into areas. But I think we're going to see a little more expansiveness with this, obviously, with a bigger budget behind it, and a little more range with the game than the Outer Worlds, which was in part, from the horse's mouth, from Obsidian, a smaller experience, and they wanted to have that more concise experience, where I think, obviously, Starfield's going to be more expansive with it, and that does excite me. I want to see how that goes, but kind of moving on here. Fallout 76, like we've talked about before, was a major gamble to take for not only that specific franchise, but really to take by, for a developer as a whole, being Bethesda, like implementing a multiplayer experience at the heart of it, where that's not necessarily a single player game that you're thinking of first. It is a multiplayer game. What about the approach of Fallout 76 scares you about the future of Bethesda Game Studios developed titles? And do you see even Starfield, like we've been talking about, having any kind of multiplayer aspects to it, do you think? Do you think after the fumbling that has been Fallout 76, do you envision them trying to go back to the well on that and say, we want to give multiplayer one more crack at it. We want to add something. It's not going to be the main thing, but we want to throw it in there to try. Or should they stick, do you see them just fully sticking to their bread and butter as single player experiences?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's clear that they want to get involved in the multiplayer sphere. It's also a situation where it feels like they almost need to go and just get the best in the development world at developing things like multiplayer when it comes to this type of game. I don't think that Starfield. I just don't see it happening. I think that the business they have is good enough that Starfield and the new Elder Scrolls shouldn't have multiplayer. If you're looking for a multiplayer experience, you can go enjoy ESO. And while I know it's not going to be the same thing, I don't think it can be. Everyone wishes they could get a multiplayer experience. You just can't when it comes to games with Bethesda in this way. So I really see it as a possibility where they will very likely, 70% likely, like above 50% stay away from the multiplayer aspect. But overall, I kind of talked about it in the last little, topic of our main point. But the approach to Fallout 76 scares me because it was just like, there just wasn't. So Bethesda at the outset of their growth and becoming truly huge. So we're talking Morrowind to Oblivion to Fallout 3 to Fallout Vegas, like huge, like basically could do no wrong, right? Like no matter what they touched, it turned to gold.
Right.
Up into Skyrim, and then you have a couple of little mishaps here and there. So I think it scares me because more and more when you're talking about Bethesda, it's getting to the point where you're getting farther away from those games that were just perfect to you're getting closer, or you're getting further away from those legacy games that were just so amazing, and you're getting more and more stinkers under your belt to the point where now this is completely and totally crazy talk, but there are probably people out there that are like, are they ever going to make a game that was as polished as those older Skyrim and Oblivion and Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas? Like, is that ever going to happen again?
It's crazy. It's crazy throwing the word polish into those, like, when talking about those experiences. But I agree with you because we're looking at looking at it in the context and the lens of their most recent experience being Fallout 76,
which is crazy,
which was hot dumpster fire whenever in terms of the state it was released in and how it was. What it just needed so much more polish. It was not ready. It needed to put that cake back in the oven. It needs to be there a little bit while it's still like dough. Like, so it's crazy to think that we look at those experiences and, all the jokes you hear about, the bugginess of Skyrim, Fallout 3, Oblivion, Morrowind, yada yada, like on and on, these massive open world games that do tend to have them because of their scale, but we're looking at those as polished pieces because of what we've seen the future's like,
Yeah,
or the current is.
I think it's really, I think when I look at a polished game, absolutely, like bugs and things of that nature begin to kind of, pop in my head where it says like, yeah, okay, there's bugs. Like I've broken Oblivion a couple of times myself, but that's what happens when you put like thousands of hours into a game. Like you're eventually going to break it because you're going to do something and it's going to be the right place, right time. Boom. And it's a situation where the testers could have maybe never even run into this, but I did it. So I don't really, it's weird. Like so when I think of an open world game, there's going to be bugs because it's really tough to work all of those things out.
Oh,
but when you're talking about
1000%.
like when I'm talking about like when I talk about Bethesda in terms of polish, like the game works really well normally, and while there might be a few bugs, it's nothing that's like world breaking that you can't get past. I'm talking even more in the story, like even like the storyline of these games, like Fallout 4 just like it just left you feeling blah. And that would be something that like if you went back in time and took me in 2011 and like I just got Skyrim and enjoyed it at first until I realized it was just monotonous over and over again, the same thing. If you took me the first 20 hours I put into Skyrim and said, hey, by the way, in the year 2020, you and your best friends are going to have a podcast. And in that podcast, you're going to talk about how Bethesda's slipping and how there's a lack of polish here with Bethesda. I would bet any amount of money that wouldn't be true. Like I would never have, taken the bet that I would be having this conversation with you, but here we are. And it's the reality that we're in 2020. And it's because of games like Fallout 76 that puts that doubt into people's minds. And once you have these seeds of doubt in someone's mind, it's very hard for developers to come back from it because it's like, what can you really do to right the ship? And it's to have a very successful launch of Starfield. It's to have a great launch of Elder Scrolls 6, or at least show us something from it and make it look good. And it's an ownership of the issue, having someone like Todd Howard come out and say, hey guys, we did mess up. We did horrible.
And give him credit where credit's due. He has come out and said, we dropped the ball on that. But then after saying that, and after it's like the cheating significant other who's just like, I'll never do it again. I'll never do it again. I promise. I'm a changed person. Okay. And then you see them, making out with somebody or talking to somebody on Tinder a week later, where in this case, Bethesda comes out and says, hey, we're listening to you guys. This is what we're doing to make it better, yada, yada. We're implementing all this stuff. We're bringing actual NPCs into the game. We're listening to your complaints you have and we're making it right. But then they turn around and do the Fallout First paid membership that doesn't even work. And people are like, no, we should be getting more the content we originally were basically told we were going to get, or what the pitch of this game was, being pitched to us at first that we thought we were buying into. Give us that first. Then we may think about buying into your service. But you haven't even given us what we've been truly asking for right off the bat,
Exactly.
So there's a lot that does scare me with that. Yeah, the increased monetization in general with gaming does scare me, but I think we've gone to a place where people have I think Star Wars Battlefront 2 was the tipping point for that, where people finally called out the big companies, the ZeniMaxes, the EAs, and said, enough of this bullshit. Like, we're totally fine with supporting games that come out with post-game content. We're totally fine with, giving people or giving developers who worked hard on these games more money because they keep providing us with additional content. Even if we pay $60, and I get 1,000 hours out of this game, I definitely want to, I don't mind throwing in another $20 on stuff, but to just be able to use the core functions of a game and put those behind a paywall is bullshit. And people have called that out, and you've seen less and less of that, and more reasonable and justified microtransactions pop up. And I think you just see there are still those ones out there that are ridiculous, but people have stopped. People have and called out bullshit so much over the past couple years that if that stuff comes out, it's just buried now, and people don't pay it any mind, and they support things that should be supported. But the way that, you know, the creation studio has been handled with Skyrim and Fallout 4 really pushing for paid mods almost, and paying for, you know, additional like modded content for your games, when for the longest time Bethesda was the friendly developer who said, hey, here's our, you buy Morrowind, well shit, here, you can get the engine with it too, here's our toolkit, you work on your own mods, you can make a whole, like, here's the keys to the city for the game, go wild. Like, we want you to keep making stuff for us. Now they're trying to monetize that. So it's like, stuff like that does scare me when it comes to experiences like this, especially because we just don't know what the game is truly yet. But I can't see multiplayer being a big facet of this game. I just can't. Like, if Fallout 76 would have saw more...
If it would have worked?
If it would have worked, well, yeah, if it would have worked, the prospect of an online Elder Scrolls game was always really tantalizing. And look, yeah, ESO released, and granted, that's the one nice thing about games as a service, that they have time to evolve and get better. And ESO launched, and it was bad. People did not like it. It was a microtransaction jumbled mess. People called out bullshit on it. ZeniMax put their head down, got to work on it, and fixed it. Now people love that game. Like, that's one of the MMORPGs out there that people really want to support because it's so consumer friendly in a lot of regards, and people want to invest their time and money into that game if it's done right. Where Fallout had that opportunity to, and it just didn't work. And I think if there wasn't as much public backlash with that, or if the past, you know, year since it's been released, the post content would have updated that, or the post launch updates would have, you know, fixed a lot of things, and you would have seen a lot more like, hey, this game's actually fixed now, it's really fun, everyone should come check it out. Like, if we would have heard more of those rumblings online, on Reddit, on Reset Era, things like that, I think there'd be a bigger chance of this happening. But I don't think they've taken now 2, you know, lumps right in the face that I don't think they're going to go for a third, knowing that there's the potential this could backfire in them. But so kind of changing directions from Starfield now, we want to talk about the big fish in the pond. You know, let's talk about Elder Scrolls a little bit. So the Elder Scrolls franchise is hands down one of my favorite gaming franchises of all time, and I feel pretty safe saying, Mike, same for you as well, at least in an overall sense, I guess.
Yes.
You know, I feel pretty safe saying that. You know, we praise Oblivion all the time for what it did for bridging the gap between the hardcore RPG market and the casual gamer, and helping introduce the genre to so many people as a stepping stone when it first came to Xbox 360, especially. So, you know, while many have looked at Skyrim being a jump too far away from the series' RPG roots, it's still viewed as one of the greatest games of all time. Like I said, a lot of people now think of Elder Scrolls, you know, there's people who think of Elder Scrolls second and Skyrim first in terms of just that IP alone. When they think, say, Elder Scrolls, oh, you mean Skyrim? Or, yeah, it's Skyrim. Oh, yeah, what's that? Oh, the Elder Scrolls game. It's almost like that Kleenex effect with tissues, in a sense. So, while it still is viewed as kind of maybe a jump too far, it's still considered one of the greatest games of all time. That being said, the mainline series has been gone for just so long now. I mean, we're coming up on 9 years. That mainline series has been gone. We haven't had an entry, and we're looking at now a whole console generation without a new entry, and, you know, hell, almost a full decade. So, do you think that the Elder Scrolls still has major weight in the gaming landscape, or has it basically being MIA and the approach of that to that, and kind of Bethesda spreading its wings in different areas, hurt the brand overall? Or do you think it still has the weight that it once did?
I mean, I don't know, honestly. With the growth of Fallout and how many people really enjoyed Fallout, it does seem like the Elder Scrolls as a series has kind of been swept under the rug, and people predominantly are talking about Skyrim instead of the Elder Scrolls. But to be fair, even when we would play Oblivion versus Morrowind, we didn't refer to it as the Elder Scrolls. We referred to it as the world that we were playing in. So Oblivion, Morrowind, even though Oblivion wasn't referring to the world like Morrowind was and Skyrim was, it's, you know, you were going into the plains of Oblivion. It was cool.
Right.
So I do think the Elder Scrolls, instead of it being Fallout, it's always been Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that it's lost its luster, if you will. But it is worth noting that RPGs as a whole are kind of, not that the popularity has gone down, but I don't think that it's definitely not a growing genre. I wouldn't say that it's absolutely dying, because there's a lot of old school players like us that really thoroughly enjoy the experience that we get from it. However, I do believe that it's concerning that I don't think oh my god, I refer to kids as the younger generation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that kids that are 14 and under are looking to play games like the Elder Scrolls. I just don't. I think that they're more looking towards the Fortnite and what the popular streamers play. That being said, if there's some popular streamers that enjoy it on their stream, then the kids, oh my god, I'm so old. Then kids might
kids, damn it.
The kids might actually enjoy it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I do think that just overall, I don't think the younger generation enjoys it as much as we do, and are going to continue. But I think that there's enough of us old heads out there, if you will, that we're going to keep it afloat, the genre afloat, just because. But there's always potential for young kids to get back into it, because they still like movies and things of that nature. So I don't know. It's weird, but I do think that the RPG genre as a whole is taking a hit, and I do think it is concerning for those who predominantly make RPGs, which would be Bethesda.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there's enough of us old fans to keep it afloat for sure, for a while anyway.
Yeah.
As long as they make quality games. If they keep making stinkers, then obviously maybe not. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, and you got to think too. Granted, while ESO Elder Scrolls Online isn't a Bethesda Game Studios developed title, it's definitely still kept the franchise and that IP very relevant. They're always adding content to it. Hell, they're getting a new update with it. I say we, like I've been playing it that much. I've probably put like 5 hours into it, but which I do want to get back to playing that game, because it is fucking fun, and that is a game that I think we can get a lot of people in on. But side note, they're always providing content updates to it. They're getting their newest expansion to come out here relatively soon, and they're doing all kinds of free content updates all the time. So I think it's kept that very relevant. And I mean, fuck, man. You look at that teaser trailer they put out for the Elder Scrolls 6. Instantly, people were like, they showed basically, like, and we're going to talk about this a little bit next, they showed next to nothing on it, but just them saying, like, hey, it's happening. You all know you all knew it was going to happen, but here's Todd saying, hey, it's happening. It's coming up. We're working on it. It's actually happening. Like, physically on record, it's happening. Gamers go crazy. I still think it holds so much weight, especially comparative to, you look at so many franchises out there, that I think it has that staying power of, not at the level of a, Mario or Zelda or anything like that, these big staples in the gaming landscape, but, it's always had that weight to it, and I think that's played in well because of how much success that, Morrowind built with a foundation, and Oblivion helped kind of bridge that gap between PC RPG gamers and console gamers, and helped kind of bring that style really over, and adding a much more cinematic level to the games. And then Skyrim just completely blowing that out of the water in terms of popularity. I think it just holds so much weight. And hell, Skyrim alone has been able to help propel that game, or that series, for just years and years and years and years after the fact.
Right.
Is it getting close? Is it getting close to that point of, okay, you got to give us a little something then. Now if they come out and say at the Xbox One or Xbox Series X kind of, press conference, former reveal event, or the PlayStation 5 reveal event, hey, you've been, we got an update for you, and Elder Scrolls 6 is coming, but Skyrim is coming to the next gen with us again, then
I think it will.
I think people are going to be pissed. I think they truly are going to be at that point pissed, where it's like, okay, now we're going to stop caring. I thought it was very weird that they went this long without having another Elder Scrolls game come, a whole generation without it. I thought that was a little weird, but at the same time, I get it. Games like this just take so fucking long to develop that it's these massive, massive titles. There's game devs out there now who are probably only going to see 3 or 4 releases in their tenure in games development because of the scale that games are going to, and it taking, 4 to 7 years to develop a game now. So
right.
It's, of these size. So I think it still has lasting power for sure, but it's getting close. I'm not going to lie. It's starting to sweat a little bit, but so like I was saying, we've seen almost nothing on Elder Scrolls 6 outside of basically a CGI pan of a landscape and a generic ass PNG splash logo just saying The Elder Scrolls 6. Outside of the setting, what aspects of the title do you feel, of this title, Elder Scrolls 6, do you feel need to be evolved the most when kind of retrospectively looking at the past 3 quote-unquote modern entries in the form of Morrowind, Skyrim, and Oblivion? What advancements in gameplay are you really hoping for with The Elder Scrolls 6?
I'm not looking for a ton of advancement in gameplay per se, like completely overhauling the combat system.
Mm-hmm.
I think what they did in Skyrim was really cool with like the animation kills and everything that you could get. However, it was kind of strange, it was really repetitive, and there weren't a ton of new ones all the time. So you did run out of like original ones to enjoy. I think that as far as gameplay is concerned, I think something that we're going to look for is honestly, I want to go a little. I want to see a Skyrim. I want to see the skill system be retroactive.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see the attribute system go retroactive. I want you to be able to choose your attributes and choose your skills.
Mm-hmm.
I want the old system back, where there were a ton of options for you to play.
Mm-hmm.
More is better in that case for me, for sure. It wasn't an oversaturation. I thought it was perfect the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it gave it a ton of replayability in ways that Skyrim didn't have. For instance, you could just make so many different types of characters. You could make a character in Oblivion that was very good at personality and speechcraft, where you could talk your way out of fights. That's awesome. And it felt like you didn't have that option in Skyrim as much. So I would almost like to see them go backwards with that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I would like them to. So it's tricky because we literally know nothing about it. So is it going to be a prequel to the games? Mm-hmm. Is it going to be a sequel to Skyrim? Is it going to be post Skyrim?
Mm-hmm.
The time frame is going to be big because that's really going to make or change the game a lot. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to be seen and a lot that we don't know yet. But as overall, I think they have a really good blueprint. If they kind of blend Oblivion and Skyrim, because Morrowind, don't get me wrong, I loved Morrowind and you did too. But to be honest, for newer audience, it is probably overwhelming to have that many decisions and there be no voice acting, things of that nature. So I think that a blend between Oblivion and Skyrim, somewhere in the middle, would be really great. I would like the main quest to maybe not have the same 2 trail option like Skyrim had. I would like it to be a little more linear like Oblivion and Morrowind. That would be cool. But I think going into side quests, so you know how you could join the Thieves Guild, but it was never really against the Fighters Guild, and it was never really against the Mages Guild. And then you had the Dark Brotherhood, which was kind of against them all, but not really. I would like you to have more options in that. So choosing guilds that might be rival, I think that would be really cool, and it would change your experience based on those guilds. I would also like you to be required to put off the main quest for a little bit. Maybe not it's required of you, but it would enhance your experience a ton more if you went and enjoyed some side questing first to kind of give the title more legs.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, and that's always, I totally agree with you. I would actually be hoping the same thing, because I think that's always, games like these deep RPGs, a lot of times, their main quest lines that you get are good. They're not bad by any means, but the heart that you get out of these games are found in the world that's built around you and the stories you find within these worlds. We're talking side quests. We're talking guilds in this situation with the Fighters Guild, the Mages Guild, the Arena in Oblivion, the Dark Brotherhood, all these different subsects of groups within here. They all have these deep developed storylines within them that you want to find and you want to, kind of pick apart. Like, that's where these strengths come with RPGs, is normally you find it by just living and breathing in that world, and that requires you to go outside of off onto the beaten path and, off the main road, and you take a back road and you kind of get to the destination. It may take a little longer, but at the end of the day, you see and experience new things. And to me, that's where, and it's almost like The Witcher 3. It took me so long to get invested in that game at first because I looked at it at the wrong perspective. I kind of jumped in and I'm like, this main storyline's not really kind of dragging me in yet. Like, but I kind of sat back and I said, let me push a little bit more. Let me go outside. And where I found strength and where I found love for that game was in the parameter around it. It's what tied everything together, because all of those characters that you met along the way mattered and played a significant role, and they all had purpose within that world. And that's what a lot of things with the Elder Scrolls had shined for me, was everything outside of that was there was so much heart and soul within, even the ones that they didn't necessarily work out with the Radiant system in Oblivion. Yeah, sometimes it was wonky or whatnot, but Bethesda was always trying to push that. They were always trying to make their worlds evolve and advance and make you want to actually be within those worlds and give them a purpose, that where every character had, their day planned out. They had schedules. They had all these things that they wouldn't just be sitting in a house at all points. Like, they wanted you to have them to have purpose within those worlds, even if they were just some random NPC that had no real interaction with the game. They still had a purpose. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's just, I hope they advance. I'm with you. I don't want to necessarily see them advance in the gameplay too much. It always felt very, like, not cheesy, but very, like, campy almost with the finishers in Skyrim. Mm-hmm. Like,
yeah,
it felt weird. It just didn't feel, it just felt cheap almost. Like, I wasn't a big fan of that. They can, like, nix that, but I'm wanting to see them. And it seems like, from what we've seen, they put out this really cool retrospective video for their 25th anniversary, I believe, of Elder Scrolls, and it was last year, I believe. But they put out this video, and it was like a 30 minute video, and in it, at the end, they talked about the future of Elder Scrolls just a little bit, and you saw just a few quick glimpses of, like, some rocks being made, and have you heard of the Skyrim grandma?
No, I haven't.
The elderly woman who's, like, balls deep in the Skyrim.
Yes, I have. Yes.
So they're honoring her, and they're putting her in the next Elder Scrolls game. They went and did mocap with her. They did face scans and everything like that. But what's really cool, and I'm happy they're using, because I always wanted to see that, especially when you saw games like Kingdom Come out with it, and they used photogrammetry textures with it, where it's almost picturesque that you're getting these lifelike textures towards the rock formations and different things. And, you're going to see that. You saw that with even, like, Death Stranding. Like, it really, with a game like this that's built so much around being just engulfed in that environment and being, you're traveling all across there, that helps with the natural storytelling and the environmental storytelling and just the world building in general, having things like that in those deep, real picturesque textures. So I really hope we see something like that kind of move forward with the Elder Scrolls. So, kind of rounding out our discussion here, Mike, I'm going to give you a quick hypothetical, and I just want you to kind of, from the gut, as we wrap up this discussion, say you're at the helm of Bethesda Game Studios, and you are tasked by ZeniMax, the parent company for Bethesda, to set the tone and message for the next generation of Bethesda titles heading into next gen. what is your approach, or what is the approach you plan for Todd Howard to come out and promote at their E3 2020 press conference, knowing at this point that both next-gen consoles have been revealed already? You know, I guarantee we're going to see both consoles in the flesh between March and May. E3 rolls around in June. We've seen them. We know what's coming and what to expect, the bar that we're planning to see with next gen. What is the approach you plan for Todd Howard to come out at E3 and the plan to lay out for Bethesda heading into next gen?
I think this. I don't know. This almost feels like a cop out answer. Like it almost like this is a cheap answer to give, but it almost feels like it should be like, instead of looking to push the boundaries, if you want to push the boundaries on the genre, push it within your means, meaning stick to your strong suits, which by the way, your strong suits are very strong. Stick to go back to the old drawing board, go back to the well, get back to what you're strong at doing, and push the boundaries within those means. So stop looking to change your games completely, change your Fallout completely. Don't do that for me. What I'm looking for you to do is simply get back to what you do best, which is developing original experiences, and within those original experiences, start pressing the boundaries of those old original experiences. And I know, like, I don't develop games. I'm not experienced in that realm of the world, so I'm guessing it could get boring. But I don't get bored playing the same game for 3,000 hours. So I don't know why developers would get bored. Like, find new ways to challenge yourself inside of a specific parameter. Because I feel like what Bethesda did is they got bored and they tried to push the boundaries and tried to do new and exciting things, and what wound up happening is it ended up biting them in the rear.
And I think big companies, when you're getting, big companies like ZeniMax or parent companies, corporate, pushing you to, hey, this worked here, why would we, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's focus on this more. And we see money in microtransactions. We see money in, I get that, because at the end of the day, this is a business, and studios are in the business of making money still, because they gotta fucking keep the lights on. But I'm with you. I want to see Bethesda almost going back to what I think I talked about earlier. When I think of them, I think genre defying, and I don't think they've been that yet this generation. I think they've been in the class of, yeah, we're right there with you, but not genre defying. We've seen experiences from CD Projekt Red, like The Witcher 3, and what sounds like Cyberpunk's going to be, come out and say, hold my beer, and they bear that flag now. Now that we live in like a post-world of The Witcher 3, and pretty soon Cyberpunk, really then taking your fantasy and your sci-fi RPG, flag bearers away from Bethesda with Elder Scrolls and Fallout, they've, and not in a, I don't want to say this in a negative way, but at the same time, they were to use a Breaking Bad analogy, they were the ones who knocked. They're Walter when Gus got him. They were once the great Walter White. Now they're Gus having him chained down in the fucking basement where he's forced to make meth. Like, you get what I'm saying? Spoilers, I guess, if you haven't fucking watched Breaking Bad yet. It's been out for years, so I don't necessarily feel that bad. Care. But point being, like, I want them to be the one who knocks again. I want them to be the one to push boundaries. I want them to be the one to... And I think Starfield is going to be has the potential to be a great stepping stone for that to happen. To have that be, this is their clean slate. And that's why I say, kind of rounding out this conversation, that's why I say that they're at a crossroads. This is a point where they're getting that, clean slate to go out there. They've wiped the whiteboard clean, and they say, okay, let's try this again. Where did we go wrong? Where did we have our fans lose faith in us? And how can we be viewed as the same as we were 10 years ago? How can we be viewed as when we release Fallout 3 and we're fucking balls to the walls, ready, people are fucking anything we put out, everything we touch is gold, basically.
Right.
We're printing money. And then same with Skyrim, they did that, but I think that's where the first time you saw traditional Bethesda fans push back a little bit and say, ooh, I like it. It's just, that was different, you know? So
yeah,
I want them to push the boundaries. I want them to be the flag bearer of the RPG that we know, and that's fine that I want them to still make their games accessible for people to jump in and enjoy them at any level. But I want, at the same time, you gotta kind of still stay true to who you are as a developer, I guess. That you don't want to necessarily, you know, I believe that you don't, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but at the same time, you should still be pushing for more and change it up. Don't be afraid to take risks at the same time, but calculated risks, I guess. It's such an interesting thing too, you know, because we don't want to ask for, we want to say, hey, take some risks, try something new, yada yada, and they do that with Fallout 76, and they fall on their ass. And they say, oh, well, why'd you do that? Well, you were asking for... So I get it. It's just such a hard nut to crack, and you know, I say that as somebody who truly loves that development studio and always truly will love that development studio. It's just one of those things that you just want to see. You just want to see them. You want them to have as much success as you envision them seeing, and knowing that they can, and knowing that they've seen in the past. So, you know, fingers crossed, man. I think Starfield could be a real turning point for them in terms of gaining some public trust back in the trust of their fan base. You know, and being a way to start from scratch in a way. So I'm excited for the future. I think there's a lot of potential that could come from, you know, them starting a wholly new IP with Starfield and really being able to build upon that and really hopefully knock it out of the park with Elder Scrolls 6. I mean, by the time it comes out, there's a potential that, you know, it's going to be over 10 years since the last one came out, and you got a lot of ground to make up for that. So, so with that being said, I think that's going to cap it off there, Mike. Mike, why don't we tell everyone, where can they find you to talk about Bethesda, Elder Scrolls, all that jazz? Probably tell you you're wrong and all that, because that's what the internet does. But where can people find you to talk about them video games?
You can find me on Twitter at TOYSXLDIER. You can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier. Come tell me why I'm stupid, or come make fun of me for failing at Ninja Gaiden Black speedruns.
Oh, you know they will, because people love to do that on the internet. And as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Traveless, on most internet platforms, including Twitter at Traveless_, TRAVLESS_. You can also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Traveless_, same as Twitter. And also, you can play some video games with me over on Xbox Live at Regular Traveless, just TRAVLESS. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is our show for this week. Thanks so much for listening, sharing, and being a part of this growing community. Game on and play them fucking video games, and we will see you next week. You thought that I forgot about a free game giveaway. Of course I didn't, because I told you, you gotta listen to the end of the show, very end of the show, to make sure and find out if you won it or not. I'm not gonna give it away in a free tweet. I'm not gonna do anything like that. No. You gotta listen to the show. I'm sucking you in here. This is marketing stuff, you know? I want you to come in, check us out, and be like, holy shit, these guys are bad. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you so much, as always, though, to listening to all of our stuff and supporting us in any way possible by just sharing and being a part of this growing community. And with that being said, let's give away our free game from our free game giveaway. The winner goes to Twitter user, drumroll Travis, Bamboo Panda 27, Bamboo Panda, High Hopes Haley on Twitter. Thank you so much for, one, listening and checking us out. And also, on top of that, congrats for winning a free game of your choice on any console that you got going on. Now, with that obviously comes, you know, your choice of it. We're sending it to you digitally, because I don't know where the hell you are, so we gotta find where you are, what country you're in, and we'll hook you up with a free game digitally, standard edition if there's deluxe or anything like that. You know, daddy's pockets ain't that deep. So, but congratulations, Bamboo Panda 27, High Hopes Haley. Thank you so much for listening, and congrats on your free game. Reach out to us via DM on Twitter, and we will get you squared away with that free game. And with that being said, now is the end of the episode, and make sure you listen, because next week we are going to announce our new giveaway that we're giving. First one of 2020, baby. So make sure you're paying attention to next week's show. We're going to announce our new giveaway on there. So thank you once again, everyone, for listening, and we will see you next week.